Hello everyone, he's Mio.
And he's Keto.
And today we'll be giving a semi-comprehensible breakdown of Antman and Wasp Quantumania. Everything it got right and everything it got wrong.
I'm not seeing enough movement!
We'll be going topic by topic, and we'll be starting off talking about characters.
First up, Antman.
Ant-Man is arguably the main character of these movies, even though now they're called Ant-Man and Wasp movies, but whatever. He doesn't really change much in this movie, or any of the movies really. From his entry into the MCU and Ant-Man, he really hasn't gone through much character development. His main motivation is still his daughter, Cassie, and that doesn't change in this movie. A lot of the promotional material seemed to tease that something new was going to happen to his character, or they were going to take him more seriously, but alas, that was not so, and that was rather disappointing. I mean, he's a fun character and all and everything, which you can count as a positive. He's a fun character, he's kind of goofy, and that works, but I'd like them to try something new and try to develop Scott Lang's character.
Moving on to Cassie, which is more of a new character introduced because she is the third actress to play this character. I thought that she was not a good character at all. I think that she is every character that we've seen so far. She is kind of this overly smart one, overly sarcastic, a little bit snippy, talks down usually to the main male character, and ends up getting captured.
Sense a theme here?
So overall, I didn't find her to be very interesting, and they didn't try anything new with her character at all. The dynamic between her and Scott was not really well explored, and she just didn't contribute anything to anything at all, actually. So I found it to be very disappointing. I feel bad for the actress for just getting cut, and yeah, she makes me feel nothing.
Hope van Dyne, aka the Wasp, the other titular character, and once again, I don't see why this movie is called Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania, because she's barely in it. Overall, there's not much to talk about. She's usually pretty well acted, and she does an okay job in this movie too, but she has nothing to do. She's really just a side character. How sad.
And her new haircut is, in our personal opinion, not the greatest one, but that really has nothing to do with her character.
Agreed!
Hank and Janet, we're going to group these two together. Hank, he does nothing in this movie of major importance or note. I miss his old interactions with Scott. They kind of played off of each other pretty well. I found the interactions to be rather enjoyable, but in this case, because they're separated for most of the film, Hank doesn't really have anyone to really work with, and he just seems like a old man that just talks a lot and talks too much. So I thought that was a little bit disappointing. He hasn't really developed as a person, and is just a little bit odd. Janet is the know-it-all, and she's just the know-it-all character. She is a lot more used to this world, so she kind of just like guides everyone else through it, but she doesn't explain anything as she's doing it, so it was rather frustrating to not really be able to learn anything at all in this movie. So I thought that was a bit of a waste. And in terms of interactions, they didn't really have any.
You know, there was one rather strange interaction between Hank and Janet when they both discussed their various affairs and flings that they had while they were gone, and they don't even try to justify it like, oh, I thought I'd never get out of this place, or oh, I thought you were dead or something. They just talk about it. It's awkward. It's weird. I didn't find it interesting or funny.
Was this supposed to be funny? I have no idea.
No idea.
But that was a really weird thing that they should have just taken out of the movie.
Indeed. And then we have the return of Darren Cross. You remember him from the first Ant-Man movie? He's like their second or third bald villain. Yeah, it turns out he didn't die. He got sucked into the quantum realm, and now he's MODOK, which is a bit of a retcon for the character. It was really just disappointing. He was turned into a joke for the whole movie, and for a character like MODOK, which is a fairly popular Marvel character, he wasn't done justice. And as far as Darren Cross goes from the first movie, whether you liked him or not, this movie still didn't do him justice. Everything about him is a joke. His death is a joke, and yeah, just nothing's there.
Now, if you like his character, that's perfectly fine, but for us, it just felt like it was too much. Now, moving on to the one that everyone basically enjoys, Kang.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Kang the Conqueror.
I think that while he's well performed, overall his character lacked something. It lacked presence. His powers and abilities, combined with everything else about him, feels like this didn't write a very good OP character. Like we had Wanda was another bad OP character. He suffers from a lot of the same problems. Overall, his powers are ambiguous, not very well explained. He himself as a character isn't very well explained. I think he kind of has a presence of sorts, but it's kind of undermined by certain circumstances and Scott's usual goofy, humorous self. So I don't really get a sense like, oh, Darth Vader is coming. It's just like, Kang.
Similar to Janet, he also does not explain his motivations very well. There are portions when he kind of explains it, and he doesn't need to like lay it out for the audience and everything, but he purposefully is vague, which ultimately leads to his demise because the other characters don't understand where he's coming from.
Which is why he ends up getting killed. And this is the second time that we've seen Kang get killed. So I'm beginning to think that maybe he's not such a overpowered villain after all. Oh well. That's enough about characters. On to plot and plot holes.
Wait. We didn't talk about the side character. Never mind.
The plot is rather repetitive. There's really not much else to say there. I'd say it primarily shows itself in the finale. That's when things get really repetitive.
It's very cookie cutter. There's nothing to say really about the plot. It's fairly predictable. If you've seen the trailers, it's given away everything about it.
Everything!
You don't even have to really see the movie.
But it's very repetitive, especially in kind of the winning and losing side. It's like Lord of the Rings, like, oh, we're winning. Oh, no, we're losing. Oh, no, we're winning. Oh, no, we're losing. That kind of thing. It just felt very repetitive, and it happens like 3 individual times. Because like, oh, we're winning, guys. Then Kang will come down, blast them off, like, oh no, we're losing, guys. And then Kang will, the ants will come in, then take out Kang, like, guys, we're winning again. And then it's constantly back and forth, and it became very repetitive and quite tiresome.
There's a certain lack of finesse to anything that happens in the movie.
True.
And just the events themselves that occur are all just stripped from other Marvel movies, really.
It feels like nothing really new happens. I will give credit, though. One positive is that it moves at a pace that doesn't waste too much time. I feel like it is a bit of fluff in there, and they could have condensed it a lot more, but it's not super, super bloated, I would say. I've seen more bloated movies.
Yeah, probably one of the reasons it's one of the shortest Marvel movies in a while. There's just not much there. Clearly a cash grab plot. As far as plot holes go,
Now that's a lot of damage!
There are mountains of them. There are so many potholes. I'm trying to figure out how to categorize them.
Let's see here. Generally chronologically, we got Janet, who's been working, taking over her father's company for whatever reason. None of them are wanted by the government anymore.
They might have gotten a pardon.
That seems so, but she's taken over the company for some reason. And then she's fixing everything from like affordable housing and food. But then immediately afterwards, we see that apparently in New York, rent is extremely high and no one can afford it, and there's a bunch of homeless people.
So it kind of makes you wonder, has Hope done a very good job? Now, I appreciate them actually acknowledging the fact that the company's been doing something, because that makes sense in the world. Then to immediately slap you afterwards and say, actually, rent is too high, Hope hasn't done anything. It just felt really weird.
In the very city that she lives.
Yeah.
They get sucked into the quantum realm by a weird quantum portal, which is never explained ever in the plot.
It implied that MODOK got the signal and he said, like, thanks, Cassie, couldn't have done it without you. But did he know who sent that signal? Because she never mentioned it to him. And was he the one who dragged them in? It was just very...
Yep, it leaks!
Things were just unexplained. And also, speaking of Cassie, where did Cassie get her soup from?
Yes, it seems that Scott didn't know about it, but he's been back as long as the rest of them have been back from the snap and everything. I guess they could have given it to her while he was doing a book tour, but it seemed like he was sticking pretty locally.
And it seems like they would have gone out of the way to explain who gave her the suit. Like, why would they give her a suit? And if anyone was going to give it to her, then it would have been like May Wasp, or rather Hope. But it was just really odd. They just gave her a random suit. I don't think it's even like a refurbished version of Janet's suit.
Which would have made more sense, because these are probably pretty hard to make. Also, when they get pulled into the quantum realm, Cassie does not use her suit. Scott, he uses his suit to protect her as they're falling into the quantum realm from getting crushed, which apparently MODOK was not worried about when he drew them in, and nobody else was crushed, but whatever. But she does not activate her own suit until much, much later.
So that was a bit of an odd decision.
Especially when they're captured by those alien guys. They might have been able to shrink and get away, but instead she just stayed in her regular clothes.
Not too much of a plot hole, but something that I would have changed for how they learn all the languages underneath this non-quantum sun. See, with this character, if you drink his body, basically you learn every single language. And this is kind of like a quick way to explain how everyone speaks English, basically. So I was fine with that. I could understand why they did it. But the way that they did it doesn't really make any sense, because there's another person who's a telepath, because he can read everyone's mind. I think what they should have done is combine his character with this weird character, and like, okay, so these characters, this guy is a telepath, he can read everyone's mind, and also if you drink his body, then you understand every single language, because like he's already connected to everyone on some kind of mental level. So I think that would have flowed a lot better. They didn't need to make 2 different characters. I think it was just for like humor purposes.
That's probably the reason, I suspect. Also, we don't know where all these guards came from, whether they're recruits that Kang made in the quantum realm or whether he manifested them somehow, but they're extremely incompetent.
To the point of ridiculousness. Janet, who is immediately unarmed but randomly also knows martial arts, by the way, that's another kind of plot hole. She just knows martial arts because we just explained it away by saying she was a rebel in the past. But she's able to take these guys down very easily, and she doesn't really wear any armor either. She just, knocks their knees in, takes the gun, shoots them. It's that easy. They're like worse than stormtroopers. That's very surprising.
What? Kang himself, he has these special super powered beams that he could shoot at anybody and can go pew, 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 and you're vaporized. but he only uses that against not unnamed characters. He kills one, like, little side character, I think we know his name, whatever, Lamphead, but he doesn't kill anyone of importance with the beams. He just, like, decides to fight them with his little pushy powers and punching them, but he never shoots anybody. Even when Hank arrives with the super ants before they charge Kang, he has time to vaporize Hank if he wanted to, but he doesn't.
I get them trying to make a powerful character that has really powerful abilities, but then after he vaporizes some people, he turns around and then doesn't vaporize Scott, Hope, or Cassie. It just didn't really make any sense. He had very optimal chances. No, not optimal chances. He had very opportune chances. Optimal opportunities to go take them out, but he just didn't because of plot.
The plot decided it was not so.
Denied.
Also, how does time pass in here? Like, how does time pass in here? Also, when they go through the little quantum tunnel thing, I'm a little bit confused as to how time passes when you're in the quantum tunnel, because the ants somehow lived like 20 years and a minute or whatever it was. Why didn't that happen to anyone else? And why are they bigger? I just don't really understand. They didn't go out of the way to explain that. I'm not saying that you need to explain everything to everyone like they're 5 and over-explain everything, but I think things like that and those details should be a little bit more explained.
Yeah. I'm sure that could work mathematically.
And speaking of mathematics, why can't, Scott grow infinitely bigger or infinitely smaller? Like, is there any reason for that using quantum physics?
The suits themselves almost make up a whole point, because they could leave, in theory, the quantum realm at any time the same way Scott did in the first movie, right? Because they have all the little strinky things they can stick in their belts and boost their ability to grow. They should be able to get out of the quantum realm fairly easily.
I don't know that much about quantum physics. Yo, computer. Hey, break down quantum physics for us, would you?
Wikipedia states, in physics, space-time is a mathematical model that combines the 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time into a single 4-dimensional manifold.
Hey, could you give us a slightly shorter description?
No.
Events occur. Until the 20th century, it was assumed that the 3-dimensional geometry of the universe
Hey, you can stop now.
Distances in directions
Hey,
was independent of
that's
1-dimensional time. The physicist Albert Einstein helped develop the idea of space-time as part of his theory of relativity.
Also dealing with shrinking tech, find it very odd that they don't really utilize it to its fullest potential. Like in the fight, let's break down that first. Okay, for one, they don't use that shrinking tech consistently, so that they could have shrunk at any time when they were captured, or they could have shrunk to escape MODOK or anything like that, but instead they refuse to. No one gets any bigger, and just beat up MODOK like Cassie did in the very end of the movie, so I find odd that they didn't do that beforehand. And then there's Scott's fight with Kang, which makes no sense. For one, after Kang beats the crap out of Scott, he should just run through the portal and go through. Instead, he waits until Scott actually sabotages the little device thing before he can make another run for the portal. But another weird thing is that Scott doesn't use any of his little shrinking or enlarging tech while he's fighting Kang. He just gets his face beaten in.
He literally does wait until his face is nearly kicked in and the helmet's broken. Maybe that's why he can't shrink anymore, because the helmet's broken?
But no, because he can use these things separately, as he did on this individual device to blow it up in the first place. Plus, also, he has a little bit of a shooter thing that can go shoot these things, as he uses it on this device earlier to try to go help out Kang.
That's a good point. So even if he can't shrink himself, he should have been able to try to shrink Kang or make him bigger or something.
Make him incapable of doing what he wanted to do.
And in fact, if it is true that he can get out of the quantum realm the same way he did in the first movie, he should have destroyed the device rather than hitting Kang to stop him from getting through, and then he should have just enlarged himself to get out of the quantum realm.
Now, on a positive note, I will say that the fight between Kang and Scott was perfectly fine, but except for that one little problem. Why didn't Kang try to go through the portal beforehand, and why didn't Scott use his shrinking tech? Very frustrating, ruined an otherwise decent scene.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Oh yes, another decent scene, I guess I can say, while we're talking about shrinking and enlarging. The whole probability storm thing, I thought that was a finely executed scene. I enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that whole scene might be counted as a plot hole technically, but I don't care because the scene doesn't take itself that seriously anyway. So yeah, I was enjoying that scene, especially when his Baskin Robbins personality popped up.
I thought that was kind of funny.
It's funny. It's kind of random. I appreciate the humor. Final plot hole. Sorry, I wanted to end on a good note, but I'm going to quickly throw this in here. We haven't covered all of them, by the way. There's just some ones that jumped out to us immediately. But Cassie just reopens the portal to get Hope and Scott back at the end of the movie. We don't know how she's able to do this. Again, it's never explained, just like how they got there. She can just do it, so...
Also, another plot contrivance would be that Janet and Scott, for some reason, were never told about this, despite the fact that they would have a bunch of expertise on it. Conveniently, they just say that Janet, didn't want to talk about it, and Scott was busy with his book tour, which is why that they never mentioned it before. And when they do turn it on, that's when they get sucked in. So that's a bit of a plot contrivance.
Okay, we can't be here all day.
Okay, well, moving on to the next category, which would be humor. I don't go to MCU movies for the comedy exclusive. I go for something else. I actually don't know what I go there for.
I go there to make videos.
Yeah, but I'd say that the humor in this movie is it does not work very well. There are some okay jokes, I think, but a lot of them are very predictable.
Okay, what jokes landed for you?
The mind reading guy was kind of funny. I just thought that was very predictable humor and like nothing that I haven't seen before.
The Baskin Robbins appearance of in the probability storm was kind of funny.
Yeah. I don't know. A lot of it just felt very predictable. Like, oh, you're getting Spider-Man and Ant-Man confused. That's already been referenced in previous movies. And sometimes the humor just disrupts the film. Like, there's one scene where Kang is saying, like, oh, have I killed you before? Like, implying that he's killed other Avengers. Like, are you the one with the hammer? That's a pretty big deal because, you know, Thor's a very formidable opponent. So if Kang has already killed him before, that's kind of a big deal. Unfortunately, they ruined that line by merely having Scott joke and say, like, oh, yeah, we get confused a lot, you know, similar body types. And I think that just really tore away from the really impactful sentence that Kang had just delivered. Like, that's a pretty big deal. And then when he mentioned, like, I've killed the Avengers later, you just kind of write it off because we've already made a joke out of it earlier. So I thought that kind of messed it up. The humor was also rather repetitive. For instance, there's a joke about MODOK, you know, being
Rick with a D.
and then the scene plays out in a way that's very similar to other scenes. It's like, stop being a Rick. It's like, well, that's what I am. I'm a Rick. It's like, it's never too late to stop being a Rick. And then later when he sacrifices himself, says, I'm not a Rick. This has been used both in apparently Guardians of the Galaxy, a movie I haven't seen, but also Thor Ragnarok, I would argue, as well. It's just the formula and the kind of style of the joke has been used very often. I think it's getting really old.
It's old and tired. It's like saying a word over and over again for some reason is funny.
And usually a crude word.
Usually. That's, I don't get it. It's kind of around that same area of when a character you don't expect to say something says it.
Like when a child like curses or something like that.
Yeah, it's not really funny to me, but everyone in the theater were just chuckly about it. They found it hilarious.
To each their own, I suppose.
Yeah, the humor just is not super well delivered, and in a lot of places it could be left out or just improved. I kind of feel like they just went for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
The jokes that anybody could see, anybody could make. No creativity.
It felt very lazy. Yeah, I think there are a couple of jokes that I appreciated, but I can't think of them right now. But let us know your favorite joke in the comments down below.
Moving on to some other creativity things, because I was talking about creativity. World building. We already talked a little bit about it. Homelessness and stuff is still continuing from the blip. That's like whatever. But in the quantum realm, there are a whole lot of visuals that are pretty reminiscent of what we saw in the last Thor movie and in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Just sort of big nebulous looking CGI fest stuff.
Yeah, and we just got finished watching Avatar, so I don't know, just CGI worlds don't really interest me that much anymore. Yeah, it's just kind of a personal thing.
In reality, I don't know if this counts even as entirely a live action film. I kind of feel like it blurs the lines and almost becomes something in between like a green screen film, like it's half animated, half live, like a quarter live action, and like a 2/3 something else. I don't know.
In terms of world building, the creatures involved aren't very well explained or explored. They just like, oh look, there's a flying squid looking thing, or like a tiny little thing in a cup that you drink, or here's an alien that you drink his body from, or drink his body. Just random stuff. And then I don't know what the point was. I guess it's to show that's different, but it's just a very lazy way of showing this stuff. And like, I don't know. I don't understand how this society is works at all, actually. Like, Kang conquered everything, but like, how do these aliens get along? Do they have different opinions? Is there racism?
Also, why are there certain, I guess they're aliens, I don't know, but the ones that look just like humans, it seems fairly simple that they're there. Like Bill Murray, what is he doing there?
Yeah, he was a wasted character, but that's neither here nor there. I appreciate some of the wackiness involved in this movie. I appreciate just like different character designs, and I think that they utilize those fairly well, although some of them are a little lazier than others. But I do find it a little bit of a waste that some of them look like straight, humans. Those are the ones that you associate the most with, like Bill Murray, this rebel leader. They're just basically just humans, and like obviously you make the strong connection because they're just humans, but that's because they put all of their emphasis on those characters.
And for some reason, even though it's in the quantum realm and you're smaller than that of the size of an oxygen molecule, the air is breathable.
The behavior of particles in the subatomic realm is often described in terms of wave functions, probabilities, and other abstract mathematical concepts.
I don't care.
Stop
Who plugged you back in? Anyway, doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Story flow for this movie was, we kind of already talked about that with plot. It was just very janky. It was also assisted by the odd editing choices. Like when a scene begins, like the scene talks go for, scene goes on for a little bit, and then probably they make some kind of reference to Kang, and then the scene stops and it goes over to the other side, and then that scene stops and goes to the other side. But it's done in such a way that's so janky, it just keeps on, and nothing ever finishes at all. Like I never get a sense of like, oh, okay, so that's what's happening over there. It's like, oh, why did I flip away? Oh, why did I flip over here? I don't know, it's hard to explain.
I think the scenes could have been condensed better so that you could more easily follow what's going on, because every time the scene restarts, it takes us back a couple of steps, so we end up wasting quite a bit of time. Also with Kang, it seems like they're always referring to him as like some big bad force, and they never say his name, they just say him, or the Conqueror.
Several times, like, I get that they're going out of the way to not say Kang, but that only works when if we hadn't have seen him in the promotional material. And we've also seen his character before in Loki, so it was very odd for them not say Kang.
And we saw him before in the same movie in the prologue.
Yes, it's just really weird. He only pops up like 40 minutes, I think, into the movie, very far along. So, and then without much fanfare. So I thought that was a really bad decision on their part.
Poorly handled.
Other than that, the story flow was simple. I don't think it's very easy to get lost, so I think that's a positive for that at least.
All right, moving on to acting. So the acting in this movie is really, there's not much to say about it. It's really just so-so.
Yeah. There are some low points with Cassie, and there's some high points with Kang. That's all I can really say in the matter. If we find out more things, we will make a part 2 of this video. Don't you worry about that. But this video is already running pretty long as it is, so we're gonna cut it off here.
If you want to get the full experience of Antman and Wasp Quantumania, go ahead and watch this 5-minute video.
And comment down below your thoughts on this video if you'd like to share them. But until then, he's Mio.
And he's Keto.
And we'll see you later.
Bye.